There's a truth that many won't tell you. God calls some of his chosen ones out of the church. This isn't a rejection of faith. It's a call to a deeper, more authentic relationship with him. If you've ever felt disconnected from the very place you once believed was the foundation of your spiritual life, you're not alone. You might be sensing that your relationship with God isn't supposed to be confined to a building or a set of rituals. It's a profound spiritual shift that shakes the very core of what you've been taught. The moment God separates you from the church is not a moment of abandonment. It's a divine invitation to grow beyond the boundaries of tradition. It's God saying, I want you to know me in a way you've never known before. This shift often comes with resistance. There will be those who question your faith and try to convince you that you're straying. But what if stepping away from the familiar is exactly what you need to experience the fullness of God's presence? So how do you recognize the signs that God is calling you out of the church? How do you know when it's time to leave behind the structures that once provided comfort? And what's next when you step into the unknown, following a path that only God can lead you on? Are you ready for this divine shift? If so, comment I am ready below. Before we dive in, I'd appreciate your support. As this is a new channel, my videos are facing some challenges, reaching those who resonate with this wisdom. If you find value in this message, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Let's explore the spiritual journey of those who are chosen for something greater, beyond the walls, beyond the rituals, into a deeper relationship with the divine. The illusion of spiritual security in churches. Many believe that being inside a church automatically means they are close to God. Week after week, they sit in the same pews, listen to familiar sermons, and follow routines that have been ingrained in them for years. But true faith is not measured by attendance or participation in rituals. A person can be physically present in a church while spiritually distant from God. The walls of a building do not define one's connection with the divine, yet many mistake structure for spirituality, assuming that as long as they remain within religious institutions, they are on the right path. Faith cannot be confined to a schedule, a set of rehearsed prayers, or the voice of a preacher. When belief is tied to routine rather than revelation, it becomes stagnant, like water that has been trapped in a well for too long. It no longer flows freely, no longer nourishes the soul in the way it was meant to. People who depend on the church for spiritual fulfillment may feel secure, but this security is often built on habit rather than true connection. They follow patterns without questioning whether they are actually growing, mistaking movement for progress. Many fail to realize that organized religion often replaces divine instruction with human traditions. People trust in ceremonies, believing that participation equates to transformation. But rituals, no matter how sacred they appear, cannot substitute for personal revelation. Just as wearing a uniform does not make someone a soldier, going through religious motions does not mean one is truly aligned with God. Without personal understanding and direct connection, these acts are empty performances rather than expressions of faith. A person's relationship with God is not dependent on a specific place. Nature, solitude, or even a quiet moment of reflection can bring more clarity than 1,000 sermons. Yet many are conditioned to believe that stepping outside of church structure is dangerous, as if God only exists within those walls. This fear keeps them bound, unwilling to question or seek beyond what they have been told. But spiritual growth requires the courage to step beyond comfort, to seek truth, even when it challenges long-held beliefs. The feeling of security within a church is often an illusion, one that keeps people from looking deeper. True faith is not about where you stand, but how open you are to hearing God directly. If an institution discourages personal understanding, suppresses questions, or demands blind obedience, it is not nurturing faith, it is controlling it. The path to God is not found through routine compliance, but through genuine connection. Those who are truly called will recognize that faith is not a structure to be maintained, but a journey to be lived, one that cannot be contained within the limits of an institution. The wilderness phase, alone but not abandoned. When God calls someone into the wilderness, it is not a punishment, but a transformation. This phase can feel like being pulled away from everything familiar, friends, community, and even the sense of spiritual certainty that once provided comfort. The separation is not accidental, it is intentional. Just as a blacksmith removes metal from the fire to shape it, God removes his chosen ones from external influences to refine them. The noise of the world, the expectations of religious institutions, and the distractions of daily life can cloud spiritual vision. In solitude, those distractions fade, and what remains is raw, unfiltered truth. Isolation can feel heavy, like walking through a vast desert with no clear direction. The voices that once guided you are silent, and the routines that once felt sacred now seem distant. This is where many struggle, mistaking silence for abandonment. But just as seeds must be buried in the dark before they can grow, the wilderness is where spiritual roots deepen. In this stillness, the voice of God becomes clearer, no longer competing with the opinions of others or the traditions of man. Without interference, the soul learns to recognize divine whispers that were once drowned out by external noise. Transformation in solitude is not instant. It is a slow, deliberate process. Just as a caterpillar retreats into a cocoon before emerging as a butterfly, the wilderness phase strips away everything that is no longer needed. Old beliefs that were built on fear rather than faith begin to break apart. Dependency on external validation fades, replaced by an inner knowing that does not waver with circumstances. The mind resists at first, searching for familiar comfort, but the spirit begins to adjust, realizing that this separation is not emptiness, it is preparation. There is a clarity that comes in isolation that cannot be found in the presence of crowds. When all outside voices are silenced, what remains is an unshakable connection with God. Just as a musician tunes their instrument in a quiet room before performing on a grand stage, this phase is where alignment happens. The distractions of life can make it difficult to hear divine guidance, but in solitude, there is no interference, only direct communion with the Creator. Those who endure the wilderness phase emerge with a wisdom that cannot be taught, only experienced. It is not an easy process, but it is necessary. Just as the strongest trees are the ones that have endured the harshest storms, those who walk through solitude with God come out unshaken, rooted in something far deeper than tradition or expectation. This phase is not about loss, it is about preparation for something greater. Breaking the dependency on spiritual leaders. In the journey of faith, it's easy to become attached to the guidance of pastors, prophets, or institutions. For many, these leaders are seen as the gatekeepers to spiritual understanding, the ones who interpret God's word and show the way forward. But when faith becomes dependent on human authority, it creates an imbalance. It's like relying on a crutch long after the injury has healed. Eventually, you must learn to stand on your own. The chosen ones, those called by God, are meant to break free from this dependency. They are not meant to follow a human voice, but to hear the voice of God directly. Relying too heavily on spiritual leaders can create a false sense of security. It's like a student relying solely on a textbook, never experiencing the lesson in real life. Leaders are valuable guides, but they are not meant to replace personal relationship with God. When the source of one's spiritual understanding is always filtered through another person, it limits growth. This reliance on human authority can prevent individuals from developing their own connection with the divine, leading them to follow without truly knowing why or where they are going. There is a danger in placing spiritual leaders on pedestals. Just as a traveler who follows a map blindly without understanding the terrain can get lost, those who follow without discernment may end up in places they never intended. Leaders, no matter how well-meaning, are still human. They are susceptible to error, just as any of us are. The moment a person's entire spiritual life becomes centered on another's interpretation, they risk losing touch with the unique guidance that God has specifically for them. The path to spiritual maturity requires learning to hear God's voice above all others, even if it means stepping away from the safety of the known and stepping into the unknown. The transition from passive listening to active communication with God is not immediate. It requires effort, patience, and a willingness to trust. Much like learning to ride a bike without training wheels, it can be a wobbly process at first, but it is necessary. The goal is not to replace leaders, but to recognize their place as guides rather than masters of your spiritual journey. True growth happens when a person learns to engage directly with God, hearing His voice in the quiet moments and discerning His guidance in daily life. Moving from passive listening to active communication means understanding that God's guidance is available to all, not just the few in positions of authority. It's like learning to read a map yourself rather than always relying on someone else's directions. Each individual has access to God's wisdom, and the more one leans into that, the clearer the path becomes. Breaking the dependency on spiritual leaders is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of spiritual maturity, allowing God's voice to be the loudest and most consistent in your life. This journey is about finding the courage to follow God's direction, no matter where it leads, without fear or hesitation. The trials of walking away. Walking away from the comfort of familiar religious settings can feel like stepping out into the unknown, leaving behind everything you once trusted. It's a journey that brings with it a host of challenges, not least of which are feelings of guilt, doubt, and rejection. When you decide to follow a different path, especially one that leads you away from the norms of religious communities, the weight of these emotions can be overwhelming. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you must leap but fearing the fall. The guilt often comes from the sense that you're betraying something that once felt sacred. For years, you may have believed that following the church was the only way to stay close to God. So when you start to move away, it feels like breaking a bond, even though what you're really doing is seeking a deeper connection that's personal and direct. Doubt creeps in as well, like a shadow that follows you everywhere. You begin to question if you're making the right decision. Could you be wrong? Was the church really the place where you were meant to grow spiritually, or have you been living a lie? This self-doubt can be a powerful force, and it often makes people turn back, seeking refuge in what is familiar. But the truth is, doubt is often a sign that you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's like a potter's hands shaping clay, testing the mold before it hardens. In moments of doubt, the spirit is being refined, and clarity will come only when you allow yourself to face the discomfort of the unknown. The external criticism can be just as painful as the internal struggle. When you walk away, you can expect rejection from those who remain in traditional settings. Friends, family, and fellow believers may view your decision as a sign of spiritual weakness or disobedience. It's as though you've become a ship that sailed away from the safety of the harbor, and now those left behind are calling you back, warning of the dangers that lie ahead. This criticism, often wrapped in concern, can sting, making you question your decision once again. But these voices, while often well-meaning, are still rooted in a limited view of faith. Their concerns are based on their own experiences and understanding, not necessarily the path that God is calling you to walk. Finding strength in this solitude is essential. Being alone doesn't mean being abandoned. Just as a tree's roots grow deeper when it faces harsh winds, solitude allows your spiritual roots to anchor firmly in truth. It is in these quiet moments of reflection, away from the noise of others' opinions, that the connection with God becomes clearer. The world may try to pull you back, but solitude gives you the space to hear God's voice without interruption. In this stillness, you rediscover the strength that lies within you, strength that comes from your unwavering commitment to the truth you've found, even when it's difficult to hold on to. Walking away from religious communities is not easy, and it is certainly not for the faint of heart. But it is in facing these trials that the chosen ones grow stronger, gaining clarity and purpose in their spiritual journey. Discovering a new spiritual path. The journey of discovering a new spiritual path is like peeling back layers of an onion, each layer representing a belief or conditioning that has been built over time. For many, religious teachings have shaped the way they view God, faith, and their place in the world. These teachings can feel like a map that was drawn by others, leading you down paths that may not truly align with your inner calling. The process of unlearning these teachings can be painful, as it involves letting go of ideas and practices that once felt like the foundation of your spiritual life. But just as a tree grows stronger when its roots break free from the confines of the pot that once held it, the spirit thrives when it is no longer bound by rigid structures. Unlearning is not about rejecting faith, but about shedding the layers that limit growth, making room for deeper understanding and true connection with the divine. Embracing divine wisdom is not something that can be taught in a classroom or found in a book. It is a personal, lived experience. It's like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble, revealing the masterpiece hidden inside. The wisdom that comes from God is not just knowledge, it is transformative. It is felt, experienced, and lived out in the heart and mind. In this new spiritual path, you begin to move beyond intellectual understanding and into a place where you listen deeply to the guidance of the divine. Each step forward is a step toward trusting in the wisdom that flows from within, not from external sources. It's a kind of spiritual maturity that doesn't require validation from others, because it is grounded in personal experience. Building a personal relationship with God through direct experience is a shift from following the words of others to listening to the still, small voice inside. It is in the quiet moments, when there are no distractions and no voices telling you what to do, that the connection with God becomes real. Just like a gardener who tends to their plants with patience and care, this relationship requires attention and nurturing. The more you open yourself up to God's presence in your daily life, the clearer His guidance becomes. It's not about following prescribed rituals or practices. It's about being open to the ways God speaks to you personally. The beauty of this new path is that it is uniquely yours. It doesn't rely on the opinions of others or the structure of religious institutions. It is a path carved out by your own experiences, your own questions, and your own willingness to seek the divine in every moment. Navigating spiritual growth without traditional guidance can be disorienting at first. It's like learning to walk without training wheels. You may stumble, but each fall teaches you something valuable. There are no clear maps to follow in this uncharted territory, no one to tell you exactly what to do or where to go. The absence of traditional guidance can leave you feeling uncertain, but it also opens the door to personal discovery. As you begin to trust your own spiritual instincts and experiences, you realize that true growth comes from within. It is no longer about adhering to a set of rules or following someone else's path. It is about forging your own, guided by the wisdom you have received directly from God. This new spiritual path is not always easy, but it is authentic. It is not defined by external expectations, but by an internal transformation that grows and evolves with you. It is a path of discovery, one that requires courage, trust, and the willingness to step away from what is familiar in order to embrace something deeper and more meaningful. Your role in the future of spiritual awakening. When God calls you out of traditional religious settings, it's not just about your own personal journey, it's about the greater purpose He has for you in the spiritual awakening of others. The decision to step away and seek a deeper connection with the divine is not a random choice. It is part of a divine plan. Much like a tree that stands firm, its roots spread deep underground to support not just itself, but the life around it. Your own growth is meant to nourish the path of others. As you embrace the calling to seek something beyond the surface, you become a beacon, a light for those who are also questioning the limitations of traditional faith structures. Your own journey is a powerful testimony of what is possible when one listens to the call of the divine and chooses to walk a path of authenticity, even when it's hard. As you walk this path, your life will naturally begin to impact those around you, often in ways you don't fully understand. Just as a single pebble dropped into a pond creates ripples that expand far beyond its point of impact, your spiritual awakening can have far-reaching effects. Others who are seeking true spiritual freedom will look to you, sensing that there is something different in your approach, your decisions, your struggles, and the wisdom you gain along the way will become a guiding light for those who feel trapped in their own spiritual confusion. They may not fully understand why, but they will be drawn to your authenticity and the peace you carry. By embracing your own spiritual freedom, you create space for others to do the same, offering them the courage to break free from the chains that have held them. Your journey, although intensely personal, becomes part of a much larger movement. People are waking up to the idea that there is more to faith than following a prescribed set of rules or being confined to one particular structure. As the walls of institutional religion crumble, new spaces for spiritual growth and discovery are being created. And in this unfolding landscape, your role is crucial. Just as a shepherd guides their flock, you are meant to step into a leadership position, not in a way that controls or dictates, but as a guide for those who are beginning to awaken. Leadership in this context is about walking alongside others, helping them navigate the uncertainties of their own journey while offering wisdom that comes from lived experience. It is about showing them that the path of spiritual freedom is not reserved for a select few, but is open to all who are willing to step out and seek truth. As a guide, your leadership is not defined by titles or formal authority, but by the strength of your example. You lead by being authentic and vulnerable, showing others that it is possible to break free from the constraints of traditional religion without abandoning faith altogether. You lead by creating space for others to ask questions, explore their beliefs, and seek their own personal connection with God. Just as a lighthouse guides ships safely through stormy waters, your role is to illuminate the way for those who are ready to move beyond what they've been taught and discover the true depth of their own spiritual potential. In this way, your spiritual awakening is not just a personal transformation, it is a catalyst for the awakening of many others. As you step into this leadership, you not only reclaim your own spiritual freedom, but you also play an integral part in ushering in a new era of spiritual awakening. Prayer for spiritual awakening and guidance. Heavenly Father, I come before you with a humble heart, seeking your guidance and strength as I embark on this journey of spiritual awakening. I acknowledge that you have called me to step beyond the confines of tradition and into a deeper, more personal relationship with you. Please grant me the wisdom to discern your voice in the quiet moments, the courage to walk the path you have set before me, and the peace to embrace each challenge as an opportunity for growth. I ask for your protection from the doubts and criticisms that may arise from those who do not understand my journey. Help me to remain grounded in your truth, even when the road feels uncertain. Let your love fill the spaces of solitude and silence, guiding me closer to the wisdom you wish to reveal. Father, I trust that my journey is not just for me, but is part of a greater purpose. May my transformation serve as a light for others who are seeking the truth and freedom found only in you. Give me the strength to lead by example, to share the wisdom you've given me, and to help others find their own path towards spiritual freedom. I surrender my fears, my doubts, and my past limitations to you. I place my trust in your divine plan for my life, knowing that you are always with me, guiding my every step. In your holy name, I pray. Amen.